Thank you, Senator Curtis, and thank you for having this hearing. And Mr. Huntsman, I'm going to start with you, kind of along the lines that we actually were on when the confirmation hearing for the Assistant Administrator of the EPA Chemical Office, as I raised concern both about the pace, but also the predictability of a new chemicals process. And I think speed, we've talked about speed, and that clearly matters, but predictability matters as well, especially when you're making, large investments or trying to move science forward. So when the EPA consistently imposes restrictions that go well beyond what's required in other nations, it can raise some questions. So we're seeing innovative chemicals approved in countries, and you mentioned this, with robust safety programs like the European Union or Japan, that but they face burdensome restrictions here, and so it can't be commercialized in the United States. So from your perspective as a global manufacturer, when the U.S. imposes more restrictive conditions than Europe or other major markets and takes longer to do it, how does that affect where you choose to invest and to make your new chemical developments?
Well, today we have some 450, the best of my knowledge, about 450 products that are in the pipeline waiting approval right now under TSCA. About 10% of those are expected to be approved within the 90-day time period. About 40% of those will go longer than 1 year, and some of those will go to sometimes up to 2 to 3 years. You take some of these same formulations and downstream applications and so forth to a country like China, and they will put a high priority. Well, they will get it done within a 90-day time period. The government will give you incentives to build, to innovate, and to invest locally. And literally in the time that you can get approved in the United States, you can be up and manufacturing that product in another country. And again, when I mentioned earlier, therein lies the new standards of that finished application. Mm-hmm. And whether it's in aerospace or whether it's in drinking water bottles and so forth, it's an international race that we're in right now. And that competition is real.
But to clarify, it's not an international race to the bottom in terms of safety and innovation. It's really the opposite. In innovation and many times I think the goal is more safety in developing new chemicals. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. The scrutiny that we're under today in new chemical development, forget for just a second about the issues around government approvals, but the trial attorneys and the multi-hundred-billion-dollar industry that exists on suing the chemical industry when it gets it wrong is such an enormous incentive. When we come up with new products today, I believe that in my 40 years in this industry versus where we were 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, it's like everything else in our economy. It's cleaner, it's more innovative, it's better, it's more thorough. Our scientific data and analysis is better today than it's ever been. So no, it is not a race to the bottom, but it is a race on speed, and it is a race on how quickly you can innovate and get to the next phase.
Thank you. I think that's part of what Senator Bozeman was referring to several years ago. We did make it certain so that the chemicals office could hire more people, could go off scale, could do it quicker than the normal bureaucratic malaise of trying to get people hired into the EPA. So it hasn't been successful, but that was part of the goal that we had because they felt like they were understaffed. So Dr. Gross, let me ask you about a question on obsolescence of new chemicals. Have you ever seen where innovation moves so fast, but materials developed may be outdated in 5 years? Have you ever seen instances where the chemical improvement process took so long that a new beneficial chemical effectively became obsolete before it could be used in the United States?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I'm actually going to take that and I'm going to turn it a little bit. Our experience is actually a little bit different. When you talk material obsolescence, one of our biggest challenges is, and I'll use an example for flame retardants. We've had regulations that we need to comply with against flame retardants where we've had to go in, reformulate material systems, requalify them, go through that whole certification process to get to the end and have new regulations pop up where we have to repeat that again. Mm-hmm. Because whatever the substitute flame retardant we picked is now newly regulated, and we just go in and we iterate. Being in that iterative process is sometimes, it takes up a lot of our resources that we could then instead be using to look at more innovative, newer chemicals instead. And so it's not necessarily it's that time frame, but it's so fast in terms of new changes. That's where we struggle, obsolescence versus new choices. So it's a little different than your question, but that's where we've experienced it.
Thank you. I will have to say, as chair of the full committee and with our subcommittee chair here, I have, over the years, expressed and had great concerns over PFAS in our drinking water. It's something that we tried to reach an agreement on. I did with former Chair Carper last year to try to get a bipartisan bill to help with this issue. My state has been affected by this. And so just for all of you can be very helpful to helping us get a bipartisan agreement here, because this problem's not going away. It hasn't been addressed, I don't think, in as aggressively as I think that we can and should. And so I'm publicly pledging, as I have many times in the past, to work to make sure that your 20 grandchildren and my 9 grandchildren can have that safe drinking water that they deserve. Thank you.